Welcome back. It's so wonderful and exciting to be able to come back to you again, Cincinnati to the greater Cleveland area in just a split moment of time. And it's interesting. Today we're going to take a look at round two of this ongoing battle between the teachings of Jesus as explained by his brother James and the teachings of Paul as explained supposedly by himself. Now, we know that there are many writers of the New Testament, and I suggest that you in great detail take a look at what's available that's for you to do your own research. So I have some interesting pieces of literature for you to look at. This one is called The Lost Gospel, and we got a giant Q on there. The Lost Gospel Q. Check that one out. Here's another. This is called The Fifth Gospel. There it is, The Fifth Gospel. And the big tome is The Five Gospels. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more about what is being said out there in regards to the Jesus Seminar, the Robert Winterhalter, and this by Thomas More and Marcus Borg is the Gospel of Q. And as we studied these in seminary, we were taught to be our own critical analysis, do our own critical analysis to become critical thinkers. And I'm suggesting that you do that as well, because, the truth is the truth. The truth is the truth. And regardless from whose lips it comes, we need to stand ready to be able to say, here's what I believe, and this is what helps me believe it. Not necessarily why I believe it, but what helps me believe it. Because for me, as I was growing up in a very Catholic family, I found out that I was unable to believe many of the things I was being told to believe and take on faith. And so I ask you, what did you learn in your upbringing about the brother of Jesus, whose name was James? I didn't learn anything. Not in 8 years of Catholic grade school or 4 years of Catholic high school. I learned almost nothing that even came close to Jesus having a brother or his own family, a wife, a son, a daughter. And certainly those things are possible, but that's not why we're here. We're here to take a look at round two, James versus Paul, and who is going to win the battle. I will say this right up front. No one wins that battle. That battle is something that goes on in our own heads, and I will say that we need to look at it to the best of our ability. And so I'm going to read you something. This comes from some of the research that I have done, and I'll gladly share with you the authors of this information. You see, the fact that Christians in the Roman Empire often faced opposition is well known. The recorders of church history have devoted many pages to Rome's persecution of those who claimed to follow Jesus. Now, we remember that Jesus probably never came to start a new religion. He may, at the very best, come to start a new sect of Judaism. However, this persecution that came to the early Christians and those followers were involved under the reign of emperors such as Nero and others. And what is less well understood is the opposition or the competition and the persecution that feature within the pages of the New Testament itself. And not only in the apostles' letters, in fact, antagonism was already the norm during Jesus' ministry. Although many of his listeners admitted that he spoke with authority, even ordinary people found his teachings to be too hard to accept. But more importantly, Jesus' teachings challenged the established religions and the hierarchy of the day. Thus, his message caused some of them to feel like there was a need to compete as well as to oppose. And don't we do that today to some degree? Don't we have this feeling to be right, this need to be well understood and actually be able to defend our own belief system? I remember as a new fledgling in unity that I needed to let everybody know about unity. First, because that was so important for me. And secondly, I didn't think anybody else knew about it. We used to call it the best kept secret in all of spirituality. But the truth is, it's been around for a long time, and we can tap into it at any time. And I'll speak to that in a little bit. You see, the exact nature of the antagonism of the first century church is well worth considering, because unless we understand the forces from the very beginning, or what is referred to as the Christian era, we simply cannot put the rest of the church history into proper context. Misunderstanding is just everywhere. It abounds, especially in early Christianity, when people were just trying to get their heads wrapped around what is it that Jesus was teaching. And remember, he didn't write any of this down. This wasn't written down until later. And when Paul wrote his epistles, his letters to all of the different groups that he talked to, this was basically his interpretation on what Jesus was teaching. And James, who came right after that, was trying to straighten some of that out, because he felt that there might be a misunderstanding. And certainly there's lots of contradiction. So in the later part of the 20th century, historians began to recognize that first century Judaism was not unified, homogeneous unit. They were all over the place. On the contrary, this was highly fractured. Variegated Judaism, one might call it. We gained some insight by studying the gospel accounts. Now, there are many references to the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Herodians, the scribes, the Samaritans, later on the Essenes, all of which are part of the new understanding that these groups were already set in those days, first century Palestine. We have historians that are being quoted like Josephus, and we can look back to times of Origen and see where some of this began, no pun intended. So the major points of difference between the timing of the Messiah's expected appearance and what writings were considered to be valid, and who should rightfully belong to the priesthood, or who should be carrying the message. Who is it that should really be carrying the message that Jesus was trying to convey, or was he? Here's where I come into play and ask you to put on your thinking caps and go into the kind of imagination of where is it that I can take what I feel is accurate about the teachings that I hear, regardless of where they're from. Does it feel accurate? Does it feel true? Does it ring with the very essence of my being, apart from how I think about it? It's how I feel about it. Do I feel inherently connected to it? Does it ring true? What is my gut reaction to whatever it is that I'm reading? Does it feel right? Does it feel true? Can I make a viable argument for it from the other side of my brain as I look at the concept of my intellect? as I look at how do I feel about this idea of making up my own mind about how things are. In other words, I would pose this question, or maybe it's a theory. Don't we all, each and every one of us, create our own religion, our own philosophy, our own individual spirituality? As I look at the teachings of all the great masters, whether it be Jesus or the Buddha or Lao Tzu or Krishna or Muhammad, I feel that in each of these is a modicum of truth. There's a truth that underlies all of it. And what I get from the teachings of Jesus is that love, compassion, and works of generosity are the mainstay of what he was trying to teach. Forgiveness, very high on that mark, on that level. Am I willing to stand ready to forgive before the incident occurs? Am I willing to be compassionate before the need of compassion is at hand? Am I willing to love without measure, without thought of what does it benefit me to do so? I think this is the religious philosophy, spirituality of all the great teachers, Jesus included. And I think the difference between where Paul and James, speaking for Jesus, comes into play is that we need to do as much as we can with what we have from where we are. And I think that means not only is it important for us to believe, but also to follow up what we believe with actions that coincide with those beliefs. Many of us say that we believe in the teachings of Jesus. Fine. I can believe in that we landed a man on the moon, but I have never set foot on the moon. What is it that I can truly believe? I can believe that we can house the homeless, all of them. But it is important for me to step out of my comfort zone to some degree to see that happen if I truly believe it. If I truly can say that the perceiving power of my mind that is linked with my ability to shape substance, that is what brings me to the teachings of not only Jesus, not only Paul, not only James, but Fillmore. Fillmore took a look at the teachings of Jesus and brought them into the 20th century. It is our job to take these teachings into the 21st century and beyond. It is our job to see that we can do what we can with what we have from where we are. Is it enough to believe that I'm saved? Said the fundamental Christian. According to Paul, that's all you need. James, on the other hand, sets a condition that we must do the things that we need to do in order to not only to become saved, but to be true followers of Jesus. I saw a t-shirt on a young lady just the other day, and it said, "Be like Jesus." And because I knew her, I said, "Katie, does that mean to become Jewish?" And she laughed as if I was talking out my hat. She had no idea that Jesus was never a Christian. Buddha was never a Buddhist. They came up with their own idea. And I think that's what they're asking us to do. Not to believe, swallow it, hook, line, and sinker, but rather to take the opportunity to develop up our own philosophy based on some truth guidelines, but not to just take it and say, here it is, we've done all the work for you. Your own salvation is your own project. And my hope is that we can learn from those who have gone before us, standing on the shoulders of our fathers and those who are grandfathers and grandmothers, and build a more humanitarian form of Christianity. To take a look at what is it that we're really doing with these things that we say we believe in. Last week, I talked briefly about taking this idea of racism and looking deeply into where it started and how it became so disruptive in each of our daily lives, and what can we do to make it different? How do we stop systemic racism? How do we reverse the tide? How do we put our best foot forward and come together as a community to stop the spread of COVID-19? We're not going to do it by blaming someone else, by wishing ill of those who are in charge. We are going to overcome these things as we read from the great masters, by doing something, by being the change we want to see in the world, by letting go of our petty feelings of being hurt and start looking at our huge opportunity to heal. We can all do this, regardless of who throws the first punch. And I'm saying that this battle, this heavyweight bout between Paul and James, who represented the teachings of Jesus, is a draw. It doesn't matter what you believe. What matters is, how do you present that in the world? Is it going to benefit the whole or just the few? Are we going to create this concept of love throughout our entire human family? Or are we going to continue to divide ourselves and separate ourselves and argue over who's right and who's wrong? Does it really matter? Do you remember that old saying, would you rather be right or would you rather be loved? My ego isn't quite that big that I need to be right rather than loved. I need to find out who I really am and how I really want to bring myself out into this world. And I think that's our job, is to find out what is it, our purpose, and what is our job in this world other than what we do to make money. Can I spread a little bit more love and tenderness and kindness and compassion? And I think looking at our world today, we certainly can. So I want to challenge you to do something this week beyond the ordinary, something that will allow you to say, I can be this much better by practicing a little more compassion? Will you smile at 3 or 4 more people this week? Will you engage in a conversation with someone who doesn't look like you? Will you hold a door open for an elder lady or gentleman? Will you do something to let yourself know that you are made of love, and how you express it makes all the difference? Peace, love, namaste. God bless you. I hope that you have a great weekend, and hopefully I'll get to see you another time where we can talk again soon. I really enjoy my time here with Renaissance Unity.